Hello, I'm Enzo, and today I'll be playing Oceanblock 2. This is part 3 of my series. I was hoping to make it only 2 parts, but there was still so much to do at the end of last episode. And trust me, that was a long video. My first goal is to make some rift crystals so I can actually head back to the rift. The main issue is the fact I don't have all the abyssal fragments to make the abyssal pearls that I need. Which means the first order of business is heading back underwater and mowing down a ton of abyssal enemies. As we all know from previous episodes, the minigun makes quick work of pretty much anything. The abyssal shards were the main thing I needed because, well, I have everything else at this point. I can easily replicate the echo shards, I can craft the teleportation cores, and in the last episode I automated all of Oritech, so I have Promethium completed. The recipe to make the first tier of rift crystals is very simple. I need an abyssal pearl in the middle, that's why I needed the shards earlier, echo shards, Heisenberg compressors, teleportation cores, and of course, Promethium. I throw this in the Empowerer for a little bit, and just like that, I get a strike of lightning, and that gives me some rift time. It's so nice just being able to make this with absolutely everything automated already. One thing I was trying to do is actually craft multiple of these rift crystals. You see, I thought I was being smart and getting myself a bunch of time by crafting multiple crystals. However, I later figured out that it doesn't really work like that. You only get 5 minutes, no matter how many of these basic ones you craft. And that's the part that's most interesting. I thought you'd actually have to consume these crystals, but it's only per craft, and it gives you 4 for a reason. This makes it way easier to make the next tier of rift crystal. Since 5 minutes is currently my limit, I guess all I can really do is create some more portal fluid and head over to the rift. And yes, you do have to make a whole new bucket of portal fluid every single time you want to enter it. I may have had to go back up to the surface. I will do that several times throughout this run. But either way, I finally can see what's inside of the rift. And let me tell you, it is insanity. It's pretty much like a Doom level in Minecraft. There are mobs everywhere. You pretty much have to kill your way through the entire place. Another major issue in the rift is I'm not allowed to fly, which means I kinda have to run, especially considering my minigun isn't doing great damage. I decided to try out high explosive rounds for a bit, but they are not that great. You see, the rift is just jam-packed of mob spawners, so if you stay anywhere for even a couple seconds, you'll be overwhelmed super fast. That means I need to just run around this place and collect as many of these barrels as I possibly can. It's a good thing I prepared a ton of supplies for this place because it is incredibly difficult. Not to mention the fact these mobs are insanely annoying. They provide so many debuffs, and one of them can make you levitate, which is probably worse than all the others. Like, I don't mind nausea, that's probably the easiest to deal with. Slowness and blindness are pretty bad, but levitating has to be one of the most annoying debuffs in this game. I'll say it's the second most annoying, only to mining fatigue. Mining fatigue is the worst. But enough talking about mobs. I have to say, this place looks absolutely beautiful. It is insanely well designed, just like the rest of this pack, and it's easy to tell that this place was hand-built just because of the level of detail here. All of the houses and everything almost reminds me of like the Soul Society from Bleach. That's the closest thing I can think of. I really like this place. I just wish it wasn't filled with mobs, and I would actually enjoy living here. Even though this is my second time in the rift, it's the first time I've actually gotten to explore. I wanted to try and clear out a ton of the enemies, but that's before I really understood that, yeah, they'll just infinitely keep spawning. There is no point in trying to fight them. But I have to say, these barrels are giving me some really neat stuff. Obviously, since the rift is the most difficult place, and time limited, you're gonna get the best loot from here, including a ton of time crystals, which are going to be very important for later. It's also good that I found the time crystals because I honestly had no clue how I would have found them otherwise. I've been struggling through the place for a few minutes, and it's almost time to leave the rift. You wanna know one major issue? One thing I didn't know about that I wish they would have told me? is that when you get kicked from the rift by timing out like this, you lose all the stuff you collected. Yeah. I wish I'd known that earlier, because all 5 of those minutes are now literally worthless. All of my loot is gone, which is absolutely tragic. I collected a ton of stuff in there, which makes it sting even worse than before. And of course, I'm gonna have to head back there and re-loot the place. The one upside I can say is the fact that the rift does respawn all of the crates every single time you go there. That's good, but you know, I just lost 5 minutes worth of progress. But at least I learned some stuff while I was there. As you can see here, getting back to the portal is a bit difficult because of all of the mobs, but thankfully they're not very fast, so I can easily outrun them. But one thing I found that can be an issue is levitating right as you're about to enter the portal. That is something I faced in later runs. But thankfully, this time I managed to escape with all of my loot. There's all sorts of insane stuff I got from the rift, and it's time to start sorting it all. Obviously, like 80% of it is going to be completely worthless, but still. There are some insane things, like some creative steam generators. Like, what? I can make an infinite steam turbine with this thing? Alright, sure, it's not that difficult to generate steam, but still, that's an insane drop. Not to mention the fact that I actually got some of the creative heating sources for the jars. Okay, I got a superheated one and then a super chilled one, which the cold source is literally worthless because there's only like a few things you can freeze. I think it's literally just like ice and the Enderman gate. I can't think of anything else you can freeze. It's a little bit stupid. But there are still some goodies in there, a whole lot of ender stuff, a bunch of time crystals, which is very good, some high tier Oritech stuff, nether stars, all sorts of cataclysm ingots and stuff like that, and a bunch of high tier mechanism stuff, which I don't really have a use for considering I can easily make it. My next goal is, naturally, making the next tier of rift crystals. Besides the fun of being in the rift and getting tons of cool loot, I need them to progress the story missions. There's one major issue that I face to make the next tier of crystal, however. Most of the ingredients are easy. One of them just happens to be Afrit Essence, and I have done no occultism. It's not that complicated to make, but I really don't want to do occultism again. I'm not a massive fan of magic mods, and I've already done this one in my Sky Factory 5 run. It's neat and all, but like I said, I don't really like it. Thankfully, there is one thing that will completely save me in this run. You see, Afrit Essence can actually be dropped from some of those barrels in the rift. You know what that means? I have to craft more basic rift crystals, go back there, and get even more loot in the hopes that I get some of this essence. I do appreciate that the mod developers give you this option instead of having to do occultism. That's just no reason this is literally the best mod pack ever created. So I guess I'll be back for a while looting the rift. This actually took me 2 trips because I guess this stuff is kinda rare, but I got tons of goodies while I was there, which I can't really complain about. The only problem, and this is very much like a gamer problem, is sorting all of my loot because of how much of it I have. To make the next tier of rift crystals, I need the first tier, which I have plenty of at this point, a time crystal, 1 infused diamond, which is going to be interesting to get. It's not difficult, I just need to craft a ton of stuff for it, the Afrit Essence that I mentioned earlier, and most interesting, an ender crystal. You heard that right. These ender crystals are from Ender.io. At first, I thought it was like a vibrant crystal, so it wouldn't be that bad. It took me a long time before I realized, oh, I need an Enderman soul to make it. I haven't done much mob spawning in this run. Like, I don't have any spawners, I don't have a mob room or anything like that, so I need to get Enderman some way. Thankfully, there is that one recipe where I can make a gate that spawns Enderman, and that's what I have to do to actually get, well, an Enderman to capture for his soul. One thing I might have completely forgotten about is the fact that when you remove a mob from a gate, the gate despawns. Like, remove it by capturing it, you know, not killing it. Those Enderman gates aren't the worst to make. I was just hoping to get, you know, more out of that one. The game threw another obstacle in my path. You see, I'm gonna have to bind this soul to the crystal. That's going to be a mild issue to say the least. You see, the soul binder needs a Z logic controller. For this, I need a zombie head, which I very much do not have, nor do I have the means of creating one. And since I really cannot be bothered to build a mob room and have to deal with all of that stuff, I decided, you know what, this is a stupid recipe either way, I'm just going to spawn it in. Technically, it's possible to get these from barrels, but it's such an insanely rare thing from rare barrels already, I think it's just stupid and should not be necessary for the recipe. So how about we just completely forget about the Z-Logic controller? I got my hands on one, and you probably know how. Classic open to LAN for creative cheats. But that was the only obstacle in all of this. Well, besides the Afrit crystals, but those were easy. If the Z-Logic controller wasn't stupid enough, for some reason in this version of Ender.io, I can't use my own XP in the machine. Like in older versions, you were able to just click a button to use player XP, but I don't see that in this one for some stupid reason. That made using this machine so easy. Thankfully, the solution isn't too bad. I just need to make an XP drain tank, which is easy enough. Alright, after all of that toil and trouble, I can finally get 10 minutes in the rift. That's pretty neat. You know the better part though? I can automatically go to the last tier of rift crystal. That's awesome. All of these ingredients are super simple. Time block crystal, obviously a block of time crystals. You know, I guess these all are very self-explanatory. Clayed glowstone. Literally glowstone dust in clay. Yep. The enhanced ender ingots are literally just the ender ingots that I made from earlier that I throw back into that ender crafter with some ender stars. So super easy. It's kind of funny how difficult the tier 2 crystals were to make compared to tier 3. Like I had everything for tier 3 already, yet I struggled with 2. But man, these took a long time to make. I swear it was somewhere near a minute in total for this process to complete. I'm thinking there's no way it's like a power limit. Even though this thing is certainly chewing through power, I think it just has to be processing time. Now that I have the ultimate rift crystals, I can actually craft another thing for one of the missions, and that is the heart of the rift. It's actually quite simple. I need one of the tier 3 crystals, promethium, enhanced ender ingot, an abyssal pearl, and teleportation core from mechanism. I have all of these, so that's why I crafted it. Also because it's an important part of one of the next missions. If you guys remember the beginning of part 2 and how I got my butt kicked by Ignis, well, I decided it's finally time for revenge. And this time I have the ability to fly. So I am absolutely going to abuse that and just stay in the air the whole time. Hey, if the enemies aren't going to fight fair, then I'm not going to fight fair either. And it seems like I was right from last time. There are 2 of them for some odd reason. No clue why that happens. They also seem to have some sort of death phase that nearly killed me. Well, technically did, but it's a good thing I brought my totem of undying with me. While I am bossing, I might as well go deal with the Rift Weaver, using the Heart of the Rift that I crafted earlier. There's only one mild problem. There are so many enemies here, I don't know how I'm going to deal with them. More importantly, my minigun isn't always damaging the Rift Weaver for some reason. I made a couple of other weapons with some stuff I got from fighting Ignis earlier, and the first one is actually called a Wither Howitzer, which just sounds awesome. It's literally a missile launcher. The second is a Gatling laser, but there's still the issue of not being able to damage the Rift Weaver. This is super annoying. I don't know why this is happening. I'm guessing it has something to do with these ranged weapons not working with this boss fight, right? Considering I'm dealing next to no damage and I'm dying pretty quick, and most importantly running out of emerald apples, I decided just to run away. I'll have to come back here with somehow better weapons. These are some of the best weapons I have, but they're not doing the trick. I decided to go with the Awakened Supremium Sword that I got from one of the airdrops earlier. This is for quite a few reasons. First of all, I think a melee weapon would be better for this fight. I'm guessing ranged is not intended for it. I can make a sharpness upgrade so it gets way better. And most important of all, I have an upgrade that lets it deal damage in a 7x7 radius. That's insane. Obviously I got this upgrade somewhere in the rift. You might have also noticed this power wire sitting here. Why is it here? Well, I want to finally get into this cybernetic augmentation station. This is a big thing in Orytech, and I didn't realize how insane it was until I actually made it. I decided to make it out of my best machine cores, which is probably not the best idea in the world. I don't know if they are necessary. Maybe it speeds it up. I have no clue. But a small issue I have been encountering is my factory deadlocking because some stuff doesn't produce fast enough, but that's an issue you guys don't need to worry about. It was literally just me that had to deal with it. Now that I have the entire thing built and activated, I need to make it work. There are a couple of issues. It took me a little bit to figure out how to make it work. You actually have to walk into that little slot in the middle there, and more importantly, I don't have any of the add-ons I actually need for it to work, because you need 3 different add-ons to be able to get all of the upgrades that it requires. The UI is super interesting. It looks like a massive skill tree, which makes a whole lot of sense. How this thing works is you can choose what to upgrade, obviously starting from the left. It takes a bit of time to research. I'm hoping that the cores matter in it, so that I didn't just waste a ton of Promethium. And after it's researched, you still have to pay more resources to actually install it, which is almost good because there are some things you will want and some things you just don't want, like making your player half in size. It's a neat concept, but I don't know how that would affect gameplay and everything like that. I don't know, it would be weird not being 2 blocks tall and 1 block wide. The add-ons are relatively easy to make, especially considering I have everything automated already, and you have to place them on the main augmentation station. They're all like their own tiny machines, so obviously I had to use more of my best machine cores for them. This is why it was so awesome to automate Promethium in the last episode, because now I don't have to worry about making it myself. It's so much easier to just let that factory run without much hassle. There were still a few issues, like I said earlier. Anyways, let's get into the actual menu of this thing and start making some upgrades. A bunch of the upgrades in here are like health stuff, which is obviously very important. That's one big thing I need. But there's also some attack damage, range, mining speed. Of course, there's water breathing, which is super neat. And later on, Elytra and creative flight. So there's some crazy stuff in here. I have a ton of clips of me making stuff in here, but I don't think I'll show many of them because you guys should probably just guess I have all the resources to make everything at this point. It just takes a ton of said resources and a lot of time to research, especially the later stuff. Obviously, the beginning stuff is going to be super quick to research, but the next stuff takes multiple minutes. It's not that long, but still, 2 or 3 minutes is a little bit painful. Thankfully, all of the upgrades are in different categories, so sometimes you can research multiple things at the same time, which is very nice. One minor issue, and by minor I mean massive issue for progression, is actually getting the creative flight. You see, you need wind charges for this, and I don't know any way to get breezes in this map. That's the first issue. I have a couple of them and some breeze rods, but these are from loot chests. I spent a good half hour running around and looting all of the ships in the overworld, but I just could not get any more. So we all know I had to resort to. But again, this is a tiny stupid thing. It would just take me a ton of time to find one of these from a crate. So that's the only thing I really ran into when making all of my upgrades. I literally had the ability to make everything else super easily. It's quite a bit later and I have a lot of the upgrades installed. There are still a few more that I'll get later on, but those aren't nearly as important as all the ones I have now. I have went for every single health upgrade I could get and just look at these stats. 51 armor is actually insane. There's also an upgrade that gives you some luck, which is pretty interesting. But here's the stat that truly matters: 74 max health. Your base health is 20, if you didn't know that. So getting an extra 54 is going to be awesome, especially with emerald apples and health regeneration, stuff like that. I think I'm gonna have a very good chance against the Rift Weaver the next time I go and fight him. It's finally time for a rematch with the Rift Weaver. This area of effect damage is awesome because it helps clear out all of the extra mobs that are here. And with the strength buff from the Emerald Apple, let's just say this fight was super easy. This is doing so much better than my minigun. Even though the minigun can output insane damage, this thing is great for area targets instead. So that was awesome. My health did get very low at the end. I'm wondering if that's like armor shred or something like that. I have no clue what's affecting me. But that 74 health definitely saved me right there. I had to return to the Nether for a little bit because I needed crying obsidian, which I regret even more after seeing that I need it for these abyss pearls. The next thing I want to go find is one of the other bosses I need to kill, the Leviathan. It's in a structure called the Sunken City. The main issue? I have no clue where it is, so I'm using these, much like Eyes of Ender, to go and find it. For a while, I thought they were actually bugged. They kept leading me in the same direction, yet no matter how far I went, I found nothing. But apparently, this entire structure is just that far away. I did not expect that at all. I honestly had no clue what to expect, but once you see the structure, it's pretty obvious. This thing is massive. It looks super cool. I mean, everything in this pack looks super cool. But I finally found it, and it is thousands of blocks away from my base, which I totally did not expect. I thought it would be a bit closer, or way further underground, but none of that really matters. I'm finally here, and it's time to enter and explore the place. Naturally, the interior is insanely cool. I just love how this place is built. And honestly, this would make for a great base area. I could easily see having multiple floors with machines on it. Obviously, there's not room for like massive reactors or anything like that, but still, a very neat place. On the other hand, it kind of gives me like a massive sewer system kind of vibe because of all the stone used and the water patterns. I don't know, that's just how I feel about it. But naturally, this place is infested with mobs, because of course it is. And it's all these super annoying deepling creatures that have tridents. Well, they're not exactly tridents, but they're close enough. At the bottom of the whole structure is the altar where I can spawn the Leviathan. The only issue is I don't actually have the spawning item. You see, there's still one thing I need to actually craft it, and I'm hoping to find it here. It's kind of like a sword. I could have sworn I had one, but after checking all of my chests, I can confirm I do not have it. I might have at one point because, interestingly enough, these mobs actually have a chance to drop it, the Athame. I feel like I've seen this before, maybe only in the crafting recipe, but all that really matters is the fact I have it now. It's super awesome that my integrated dynamic system has infinite range, because I can literally just craft the summoning item here. I don't have to go anywhere near my base again. That's one of the best parts of this entire system. Either way, it is finally time to fight the Leviathan. I am super excited for this fight. Another thing that makes this Cataclysm mod feel a lot like Calamity is definitely these bosses. They're super cool looking bosses, they have great music, and awesome fights. Well, except for the fact that I can actually melt them super easily. You can't do that in Calamity. Another thing that feels very similar to Calamity is actually their death phase, where they're trying to kill you before they die, you know, going out in a blaze of glory and all. And the Leviathan created this black hole sort of thing that's sucking a ton of items, and funnily enough, some of the other mobs into it. Naturally, it explodes when it expires, and I'm guessing that would have killed me. But yeah, that's the Leviathan fight. I know the minigun kind of chewed him up, and that made this fight a whole lot easier, but it was still super cool. And that's another thing off of my checklist. On the way home, I went to go raid a bunch of structures and collect a ton of replica ore. I also upgraded my furnace with an Awakened Supremium upgrade. I didn't even need to make the enchantment to get the Cognizant Dust from the Wither this time. I actually just found this in the Rift, which is far more convenient. Either way, you can probably guess what I'm going to do with all this replica. Yeah, I'm expanding the replication farm. The replication mod is one of my new favorites. I don't exactly have a list of like all of my favorite mods, but this is easily top 5. It's one of the best ones ever made for sure. It's just so insanely useful for making a ton of stuff that would be annoying to set up otherwise. not to mention how well replication integrates with a ton of other mods. One of my favorite examples is Applied Energetics 2. It makes creating all of the processors so much easier, and obviously the storage drives, which are the worst to make. But now I can just throw a ton of items that have all the base matters and print them. It's so much easier this way. Skipping an insane amount of reading and crafting that I've been working on, I built an entire auto crafting setup for my ME storage system. I also added a water tank to the bottom of it and, water storage and all of that, so I can automate liquid crafting. This is extremely important because the next major thing I want to work on is creating the reprocessor and the other buildings from Extreme Reactors. The main issue with making the reprocessor is the fact it requires water to craft. Well, at least the casings, but you need the casings to build it and all of the other machine parts. Since I really don't want to click 1 billion times to craft enough casings, I decided it'd be far easier if I just learned auto crafting first. And I can confirm it is way easier this way. The recipe isn't even that bad, it's literally just iron, cyanite, and water. But, the normal recipe requires water buckets, and that's the primary issue. I'd have to click a few times to make each individual block. This makes it go so much faster. It's far easier than before. I haven't even added speed upgrades to this thing, and it's already super fast. Needless to say, I am very happy with this entire system, and it'll make crafting a lot of the Extreme Reactor stuff a whole lot easier. These casings are like the best example, but the fluidizer also requires water buckets. It took me somewhere over 30 minutes to finally figure out the right configuration to make this thing, because it needs certain blocks in certain spots. There has to be one specific one at the top and bottom. Either way, it's completely finished now. It's a super neat little building. Unfortunately, it is a fixed size of 3 by 3 by 7, and I was freaking out a little bit at the end because of how annoying it was to make, but it's finally done. I really wish you could make these things larger because they're pretty slow, so you need way more of these things if you want to scale up production. You can't just build a larger one, unfortunately. Either way, this gives me the ability to reprocess a whole lot of materials, which I'm actually not used to. I'm only used to making plutonium for ludicrate blocks, but that's in older versions of this mod. In this newer version of the pack, there's a whole lot more stuff we can make with the reprocessor. Trust me, this mod gets insane later on. But for now, it is the classic water and cyanite makes plutonium. A while later, I also built this fluidizer. This is another new building, so I have to figure out how it all works first. But to make all the casings and everything, it requires iron and uranium instead of cyanite, and of course, water. This is a super neat building that can actually be built in a couple of ways. You see, the fluidizer can do some super cool stuff, including melting Extreme Reactor stuff, or alloying them in a way. It can mix solids, it can mix solid and liquid, it can do all sorts of neat stuff. Unfortunately, you can only choose between the modes, so I can only do like solid mixing or liquid mixing and stuff like that. I might have also forgotten to mention that other reactor right next to it. You see, that's a brand new reactor I made. It's pretty much the exact same loadout as my first one, but instead of uranium, it's actually using plutonium as a fuel, which is so much cooler. I love this reprocessing setup purely because of that. It's very similar to real life where, uranium gets reprocessed into plutonium, which then can also go into reactors. I love this. I guess a better comparison would be like nuclear craft, which has really good reprocessing recipes and gets super crazy later on, but it's a very difficult mod to deal with. Anyways, my first use for the fluidizer is actually going to be mixing plutonium and uranium. It's a very odd combination, I know, but this makes another material that's going to be super helpful for this mod. Once I actually manage to mix it, sometimes the inputs have to be on certain sides, sometimes they just swap sides occasionally. It's a little bit buggy, I think. But combining these two makes verdurium. It's a brand new resource that I don't think exists in real life, or at least I certainly haven't heard of it, but verdurium is a brand new type of fuel. Just like plutonium can be used as fuel, actually it makes a lot of sense now because it's literally mixing plutonium and uranium. but it'll give me a brand new type of output. And naturally, feeding this into a brand new reactor will give me a brand new type of byproduct, which I'm going to need for some later recipes. This clip is again in a testing world, if that's not very obvious. The first thing was figuring out the fluid reactors. You see, instead of using solid fuels, you can actually use liquid fuels instead, which is necessary when you're using the fluidizer, which, creates fluid fuels. But the primary test of all these reactors was to test different moderators inside of them. And the only difference that I've found is actually just the power generation. You see, I was hoping that certain moderators would increase the usage speed of fuel, but that's not actually the case. Normally, you don't want the fuel to be used up very quick, but this is not a normal scenario. As a matter of fact, I want the reactors to eat up as much fuel as possible. The best way to do that is, well, just build a larger reactor. That's legitimately how you do it. It also helps if you take out the byproduct as fast as possible, because if you leave the byproduct in there, it'll actually decrease the efficiency of the reactor. In total, I learned a ton of interesting stuff from this testing world, and from now on, all the reactors I'll be building, in this playthrough at least, since I don't need the power, they'll be using iron blocks as the moderator, because that's just the cheapest thing for me to make. I can throw all of my different metal ingots into the replicator and make tons of cheap iron. I haven't tried steel. I don't know if steel actually works as a moderator, but that's probably better because it's literally the same cost as iron, at least in the replication system. One of the ores that I've accumulated a ton of throughout this run is aluminum. It has had literally 0 uses up until now, oddly enough. I need an insane amount of aluminum dust to make some crystals that I'm going to need for my next goal with Extreme Reactors. Unfortunately, it requires a bunch of other items and a lot of processing to make them. You see, the crystals I need, I believe it's benitoite or something like that, but I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm just going to call them crystals. But I need these crystals to make some of the stuff I want in Extreme Reactors. The main issue is that they're difficult to make, and by that, I mean they require polymorphic fluid. I knew this was going to be a slight nightmare, but thankfully, with just dire things, I do have a good idea for how to automate it. Using a precision item dropper and a fluid absorber, I can actually make a super simple setup that drops the polymorphic catalyst and then picks up the polymorphic fluid. Yeah, it's not as bad as I make it sound, it just took a bit to figure out. It's nice because the advanced fluid absorber can actually have a filter on it, which is exactly what I did to only pick up the polymorphic fluid. And the catalyst, even though it requires blaze gold and nether wart, I can actually just replicate it super easy. By throwing the aluminum dust and polymorphic fluid into a centrifuge, obviously with a fluid add-on, I can easily make the benitoite crystals that I need. I am definitely butchering the pronunciation of that, and people are going to roast me in the comments. This is still the only use that I've actually found for aluminum so far. Maybe there's like a tiny bit in immersive engineering, but it is far more useful here because of what it'll let me make a little bit later on. Thinking about it now, this whole process is kind of worthless because I didn't even use the ultimate thing I wanted to make. It was kind of just the journey that was a ton of fun. Alright, so I had a whole nother thing I said for this part, but it's definitely something with DaVinci Resolve 20 and the new voiceover feature. You see, instead of switching tabs to Fairlight, which I normally have to do for voiceover, I'm just using the little pop-up you can do in the Edit tab. It still has some bugs though. I don't know how you do it, but I'm guessing it has something to do like if you click off of the Edit tab onto, a different monitor or even application, like, a calculator, it actually just deletes the recording that you were working on and there's no way to get it back. That really sucks, but it's something good to know. I accidentally deleted one other recording by accidentally hovering over one of the recorded audios already, so that also breaks it. That's a whole lot of fun, but this system is still easier and I like it a whole lot better. I honestly might report my issues as bugs and hopefully they'll fix it, because losing a ton of voiceover audio like I just did is a huge vibe killer. But anyways, as you can see, I've been working on building a fluid reactor. This is that veridotite stuff that I made a whole lot of earlier, and let me just say, it looks absolutely beautiful. You see, I was originally planning to make the fluidizer just like the other structures, where it's, solid blocks, but then I thought, well, it's probably gonna have fluid in it, so it's gonna look really cool with glass. And I was totally right. It looks so super cool with glass. You just see this beautiful green glowing fluid, and that's how you know it's some radioactive stuff. I'm going to use this vertitite to fuel this reactor. Instead of using solid fuels like before, this is a liquid fuel reactor, which means it's also going to output a liquid byproduct. The byproduct is called rosenite, or something like that. It's like this red glowing fluid. It looks super cool, and I'm guessing it's a 1-to-1 ratio of input to output for this reactor. I don't even care about the power that this thing is going to generate, which, first of all, it's going to generate an insane amount of power. I don't even need it, but I literally just care about that byproduct. Just like the plutonium reactor, all I built that one for was literally the magnetite byproduct. I've been working on all sorts of things in the meantime, but here's one crazy thing I wanted to note. Look at just how much fluid this thing has created. Thankfully, these Orytech tanks are very cheap to make, but they can hold 256 buckets per tank, and that is 16 buckets right there. That is insanity. There's still quite a bit of fuel left in the reactor as well. I guess that just goes to show how much these reactors can really hold. I guess it only really hits you how many resources these things take when you actually put them in tanks to scale it like this. If you're wondering why there's a reprocessor right next to the fluidizer, well, that's the other reason I needed the fluidizer, to actually melt down certain materials. In this case, it's actually cyanite. I'm going to be combining cyanite and plutonium in the reprocessor to make my next material. It's super cool to be able to make new things with the reprocessor for once. I was getting quite tired of that cyanite and water recipe. This new recipe lets me make ludicrite, which I know sounds very familiar, but it's nowhere near as insane as before. The ludicrite blocks are obviously pretty good, either in turbines or as a moderator. However, I can throw this right back into the reprocessor to do something else neat with it. I know you're wondering about the rosenite, and that will come in later. For now, I need the magnetite that is the output of the plutonium reactors. This is what I need to throw into the fluidizer and reprocess with the ludicrite. This gives me the next tier of ingot called radiculite. Yes, I know, we have so many different tiers of ingots and reactor processes here, but bear with me here for a bit. We're getting to the cool part. This is where the rosenite that I was creating earlier finally comes in. I throw these ingots back into the reprocessor, yet again, and the fluid is going to be that rosenite. This is also the reason I built a second reprocessor, because I'm going to be using a ton of these. Besides reprocessing the radiculite ingots, this is also where the crystals that I was making earlier come in. I built the second reprocessor so I could also see how the glass looks. Honestly, I didn't know what I was going to expect, but this is just a tiny bit lame. I mean, sure, the animation is neat, kind of the crystals transforming into ingots, but it's not actually that interesting. I guess the reprocessors do kind of look cooler sealed. They look a whole lot like centrifuges in real life. Alright, so what has all of this work been for? These inanite ingots and insenite ingots. Yes, I know, this is just ridiculous. I mean, the fact that I never actually used these is even crazier, but it was a ton of fun to figure out this entire process and actually make these resources. The pink ingots, or inanite, needs netherite blocks to turn the ingots into blocks. With those, I can turn those into insenite blocks, and these are the single best block in Extreme Reactors. Best for reactors, and obviously best for steam turbines. The only issue is, I never got to building a steam turbine with these. It would certainly be neat to see how it works, especially with the infinite steam generator, but at this point I legitimately don't need the power and just want to finish up the rest of the story. When I was working on a side project with some of the goo, I dug around and found this. Remember a while back when I had these things spawning and I couldn't figure out why? I knew it had to be a spawner somewhere, and I finally found it. This is great because now I don't have to deal with those stupid golems spawning ever again. And to think, I only found it because I accidentally mined the wrong block. So now I truly shouldn't have to deal with mobs on this island ever again, which is nice. For my next project, I want to finish up Extreme Reactors and build their massive power bank, the Energizer. Since this is another building I've never seen before, I'm super interested to see how it works. Well, okay, it's literally just a giant battery, but I want to see what capacity I can get. The main problem is that the Energizer is insanely expensive. It's not even funny. It's just taking me a little while to figure out everything I need to make it. You see, I need sulfuric acid to make a certain type of crystal. The main issue is that sulfuric acid is very complicated to make. I start out with sulfur, which is easy enough. I have sulfur seeds and a garden cloche, and I can turn that into sulfur and then the chemical. The sulfur chemical then gets combined with oxygen. The sulfur and oxygen makes oxygen trioxide, which is the predecessor to sulfuric acid. Sulfur trioxide goes in with water vapor, which is, water in a gaseous state, and combining those will get me the sulfuric acid that I need. Just like the other crystals that I made earlier, the final step is throwing them into an Oritech centrifuge with some lead dust this time. Now that I have this anglesite, which is an interesting name, I can combine this with magnetite, redstone blocks, and Eyes of Ender to make the cores I need for, well, the cores of this entire machine. These also require the crystals that I made earlier and an insane amount of gold and iron blocks, which aren't the worst. Considering how many I was able to make at the beginning, I had an absolutely horrible idea. I wanted to make a 5-cubed block of this. So that's going to be a 7-cubed exterior of the Energizer. Thankfully, the Energizer caser is super cheap to make, but these crystals, let's just say they're going to take a little bit of time to make enough. Another thing I wanted to take a quick look at was enchanting with Oritech. I didn't get very far into it, but it looks really neat. Apparently, you can increase the enchantments like over level 5. I think you can get up to like 10 levels on some stuff. Unfortunately, you need a lot of souls, which obviously come from living things, and I don't have any mob spawners just yet. So I'm not sure if it was that, or the fact I didn't actually stabilize this with an Endrick laser at first. But when I placed it down, I wanted to just see what it looked like, and only in recording can you actually see there's a menu for like a split second, but I did not see that. The game just straight up crashed for me. So it would have been neat to play with this a bit more, but I'm not going to risk my game crashing even more. After that, I was reading a ton of different quests, and I found this interesting thing that would have been great if I knew it existed at the start. Temporal pouch. Pretty much, this thing saves up time, like, actual playtime, and you can use it to speed up machines. It's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on all machines. I tried it on the Extreme Reactors, but obviously it does not work on them. But stuff like the Garden Cloche and maybe Oritech stuff would be good for it. I didn't use it much, but it can be very helpful in some scenarios. Since I love the replication so much, I actually want to expand my network even further. I completely forgot that there was actually a recipe to make more replica ore. It's not too difficult, which is nice. And I already have the polymorphic fluid, which is a big part of the recipe, already completed. The only other things I need are the void coal, which is super easy, and black quartz, which I have an insane amount of, and I've just had it automated this entire time because it comes from netherrack. So guess what? I had a good long recording going of making this entire neat setup to automate the goo coal production, but long story short, one of my cats, actually the only cat that'll stay in my room, he's a super adorable cat, but he is just the biggest scaredy cat in the world. He is just terrified of strangers. And unfortunately, there were a ton of people at my house the day I was recording this. You see, he likes to sit next to my computer to hide from people, but he was so terrified this time, he was trying to tunnel behind my computer, and when I was trying to get him out of there, he managed to pull the power cord. I was insanely mad at him for this, because first of all, that's just annoying. I let him go literally everywhere, but not behind my computer. That's what I've been trying to teach him. But of course, he got back there, he pulled the power cord, and I lost the recording of me setting this up. This setup uses integrated dynamics to export and import stuff into the world. In this example, I'm placing the coal blocks and then mining up the goo to get that coal that I need. It's super simple. It just took me a little bit to figure out. After who knows how long, the Energizer is almost complete. Again, this is a very big and expensive building, mostly just because of how long the resources take to, produce. A lot of it was waiting for the magnetite from the reactors. And the Energizer is finally complete. I'm so excited to see how much power this thing can hold. I mean, all of the components are super expensive, so I can't wait to see. And I don't think you're intended to ever build one this big. I don't remember what the limit is. It might be 64, but let's just say it can store a tiny bit of power inside. Now, it took a long time for that number to register in my brain. What is a P? I thought at first it was some sort of like in-game energy measurement, just like forge energy or redstone flux. But because of a tiny bit of computer knowledge I have, I finally realized after a while, wait a minute, that's peta RF. Actually, I don't know the right way to pronounce it, but you know how there's gigabytes and then terabytes? Yeah, that's what comes after terabytes. I don't actually remember how many zeros are after this number, but if it's after terabytes, it's quite a few. Because 1024 gigabytes is a terabyte. So I don't know if it's 1,000 terabytes or something like that. I certainly have a feeling. Let's just say I don't believe it's actually possible to fill this up with power. I'm not even joking. I'm gonna spoil a bit now, but throughout this entire run, with 3 and then the other reactor that I'm working on, feeding this thing, it literally never got to 0.1%. This Energizer has been at 0% the entire time. I don't even know what a 0.1% of this thing would be. That's how insanely massive of power capacity this thing has. This has to be the most ridiculous building in Minecraft. Or at least most ridiculous power storage. Draconic Evolution has nothing on this. One of the main reasons I wanted to expand my replication network is to build this. This is practically the max size reactor. It's 31 by 31 instead of 32, but that's just me. I really should have just made it at 32 because I can't tell the difference from here. Another thing I really should have done is filled it with uranium instead of plutonium, but I just had to do plutonium because it's so much cooler. Plutonium is very annoying to acquire, however there is one other way to get a little bit more, and that is replication. You see, it requires some metal, precious, and of course quantum matter. The best way to get quantum, besides nether stars at least, is uranium blocks. That's why I built another uranium extractor here. I also built a ton of garden cloches with cyanite seeds earlier, and I'm always gonna have those reprocessing into plutonium in the background. I didn't generate anywhere near enough plutonium to completely fill up that reactor in this run. As a matter of fact, I think it drained all the plutonium at some point. Alright, but now is when the reactor fun really ends. It was super neat seeing all the new Extreme Reactors stuff, but it's time to get back to actual missions to complete the story. For this, I need all of the empowered blocks from Actually additions. I need to empower a bunch of different ingot blocks using a ton of different and unique materials. They all make a lot of sense. For the emerald block, it's green stuff, saplings, grass, lime dye. I don't really know what else to say here. The colors kind of just match. I obviously have everything I need to make all of these at this point. It's just a struggle to find all of them. One of the neat things I've wanted to play with in this mod is the particle accelerator. Unfortunately, at this point in the game, I kind of just want to complete the pack. Earlier on, maybe it would have been neat to use the particle accelerator, especially for like overcharged crystals. It would definitely be way easier to make them in here instead, but at this point I really didn't feel like setting up the entire thing, because it looks pretty complicated. I mainly just need to make the particle accelerator, of course, for the trophy that'll let me beat the game. For the next trophy, I need to somehow break this giant prismarine crystal that we found all the way back in episode 1. To do this, there are quite a few steps I had to complete first. It took me a lot of reading and testing to figure out, but I needed to beam multiple of the catalysts into the crystal, specifically using prismarine crystals instead of shards, because they output like a different type and level of energy, and I needed that to purify a component to create this pickaxe. Throwing the pickaxe in this, it's like electrolyte algae serum or something like that. EAS is all I know. But this stuff can upgrade my pickaxe, and that's why I have, the kelp slime balls and all that other stuff in my inventory. And this pickaxe is what I was down here to make. Well, so I could break the crystal. Now that I have that completed, I get the prismarine crystal trophy, and we are getting so close to the end. The final thing I need to make is a quantum crafter from Applied Energetics. And boy, when I started this out, I had no clue what I was getting into here. This is one of the most complicated things probably in any mod pack ever, just because of the insane amount of resources that's required for it. I didn't do the math, and I don't know exactly how many, but you need just stacks upon stacks of singularities. You guys remember how complicated those are to make, right? Singularities. This would have been far more difficult, but thankfully, in the previous episode, one of my viewers left an awesome comment that told me I could make a little storage drive that gives me infinite water in my storage system, which is neat on its own, but more importantly, you can export this water into matter condensers. So that's how you get infinite resources to make your singularities. This is still going to take quite a bit of time though. Normally, to make a singularity, you would need 256,000 items. I don't know how long that'll take with like 5 exporters with maximum cards, but that's still going to be a long time. However, with one of the other Applied Energetics mods, there is a way to make singularities at least a little bit easier than before. Instead of 256,000 items, I only need 256 times 54. Whatever that is. You see, one of the other modded buildings allows me to use some lava, which is super easy to get. I can actually just pipe that straight to this building, and a stack of just the matter balls, which are far easier to craft. No matter how you look at it, this is far easier than 256,000 items for a singularity. But this is nowhere near the amount of singularities that I'm going to need. This is just the beginning. One of the next major ingredients I need are entro crystals. These are super interesting because the seeds have some neat components like ender pearl dust and skystone dust, and to actually grow more, I need to put them onto Fluix blocks. Conveniently, in last episode I made a crystal growth accelerator, and that works on these crystals as well. It took me a while before I finally realized the main downside to the growth accelerator. It actually decreases the quality of the crystals it produces, or like the blocks, because these blocks that I placed before were flawless, but now they're all garbage, like flawed ones. And even though I could use this method to farm a ton of these crystals, the faster way I actually found was just turn them into seeds from mystical agriculture and grow them in a garden cloche. It's my favorite method, as you guys probably know by now. The whole reason I wanted these entro crystals is to make a bunch of entro ingots. I wanted these so that I can make some upgraded export buses, and I was hoping that they would make the export process go faster. That's what it says, but after some testing, it didn't really feel like it. Maybe I should have mass-produced these and used way more of them, but the extended export buses are way more expensive. Before I can actually make the next part that I need, I have to make shattered singularities. These require singularities, which is definitely the most expensive part, and then some skystone and ender pearl dust. These need to be thrown into a reaction chamber with a bit of lava. just like the recipe to make singularities. Conveniently, I can just throw all the ingredients in there and actually craft both at the same time. Now that I have a few shattered singularities, I can just barely make the first actual part for this thing. That's right, this is the first part. I still need several other parts, and they are infinitely more complicated than that one. You see, this 256 crafting component is the most complicated part of the entire thing. This requires several shattered singularities, which is going to take a ton of normal singularities, but even worse than that is quantum ingots. These take an insane amount of singularities to make. Needless to say, I'm gonna be here for a little bit. So here is the massive setup I made of matter condensers. It's super convenient that Applied Energetics has this, copy and paste tool. That's very nice for all of the export buses, and it even copies the speed upgrades, which is even better. Capacity upgrades, at least in this version, all they do is just increase the amount of filters you have. They don't actually help out with transfer capacity. After a little bit, now that I have even more singularities, I can finally craft one of these quantum ingots. These take all sorts of stuff, and don't even get me started on the liquid that's needed to make it first, because I actually don't remember at this point. I'm guessing it's all like skystone, ender dust, singularities, a lot of this expensive stuff. With these 2 ingots, there's something else I actually need to make. I need to make a press for the inscriber, and I need to turn these ingots into circuits eventually. The fluid that I need before this, it's also dust. It takes a lot of fluix components and some water, so it's relatively easy. Well, I think anything is easy compared to all the singularity stuff. One main issue with this entire setup is the fact it's not all working. That's because you can only have so many machines on a certain channel in Applied Energetics. To fix this, I tried to add a bunch of these large cables, but I didn't understand entirely how they worked. So these large cables can carry up to 32 channels. The basic glass cables can only carry 8. I'll be using the large cables to transfer 32 channels and then divide those up in the smaller cables. I know it's a bit confusing, but even with this setup, I can't have every single exporter active. It definitely would have been faster just to create an entire new ME system. Thinking about it now, that certainly would have been way faster than whatever this is. I went AFK for a while. I mean, it should be pretty obvious why, and I finally have enough singularities to first craft the shattered singularities, and then of course the quantum ingots that I need. The rest of the process is the exact same as before. I need to press these into new circuits. But the classic interrupting airdrop. I don't know how many of these I've had throughout the 3 parts of this run, but let me just tell you, it's a lot. It wouldn't be so bad. I do appreciate the resources, but it blocks out my entire screen. I can't see what's in my inventory. With who knows how many singularities and a lot of other expensive resources, I can just barely make the quantum crafting unit. This was just ridiculous. I cannot believe how crazy this entire recipe is. But all that truly matters is now it's done, and I can actually get the last trophy that I need. But you see, there is one mild issue. Early on in part 1, I may have thrown out a lot of the trophies because I did not know they were necessary to beat the game at first. This soft locks the game. I'm not even kidding, I physically cannot beat this run now. Normally, of course. After over an hour of looking at commands and creative mode trying to figure things out, I finally discovered that I can actually use cheats, well, obviously that's what I've been using this entire time, to actually edit a bunch of the interesting quest stuff. The main issue with the trophies is the fact they're all unique things. I can't just spawn these in from creative mode. Since they're all very unique to this pack, and I can't even tell what their ID is or anything like that, the best method I found is actually resetting the quests that give me the trophies. Honestly, I think this is the best thing I could have asked for, just being able to do the quest again and get the exact same reward. But again, if I wasn't stupid and didn't throw out all the trophies at the beginning, this would have been far easier. To be completely fair though, I thought the trophies were worthless because I didn't look ahead in the quests. I didn't want to spoil all the missions ahead, so I thought the trophies were pretty much worthless. Nope, they are very important. And now, with all 12 trophies, you're supposed to place them on the pedestals where you create the portal, place down even more portal fluid, and in theory, you should be able to go home. The first issue is the fact I don't actually have portal fluid, so I'm gonna have to go make some more. Apparently, you're not allowed to make portal fluid down here, even if you want to. I can literally only make this portal fluid on the surface, which is very interesting. As you guys can see, I have all 12 trophies here. Alright, I place the portal fluid down, okay, and I'm in the rift. I should not be here. What should have happened is I teleport to whatever home is and beat the game. That didn't happen. Alright, I'm gonna save us both a ton of time and just say, yes, the game is officially soft locked. I cannot beat this pack. But I technically have, so I'm going to anyways. There's actually a cooldown on entering the rift, which I didn't realize because I just sort my loot after every trip. Even though I can build another rift portal, just like an end portal in vanilla, and I placed down all the trophies on it, yeah, nothing. It's just completely broken. It's funny because after looking around in the missions after this is the only time I decided to start reading the lore. I kind of forgot about this tab, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, of course the lore is super neat, but I do not have the time to read it all to you guys. I mean, you've seen how long these videos are already. You can also get music discs, which are a voiced form of the lore, but I'll be perfectly honest, I think this might be like a text-to-speech voice. I mean, I'm sorry if there is an actual voice actor behind this, but it's kind of hard for me to tell. But still, that's not what matters. I technically have beaten the pack, but I'm not home yet. I'm still stuck here. Alright, I've already shown that I can easily make the portal and everything for it. I should be able to go home, I'm just not allowed to because of some sort of glitch. Likely what I've done. So I gave myself the creative portal switcher, and this is the item that lets me change the portal and return home. A cool thing is the fact I can actually return back to Oceanblock world, but why would I want to do that now that I'm home? I spawned all the way at the bottom of the world, but when I dig all the way up, it's just a vanilla Minecraft world. That is beautiful. After 80 hours of progress, it's all complete. I've finally beaten this mod pack, and I can finally work on the video. I've said it several times, but this is the greatest mod pack I have ever seen and played. It is just insanely well done. The progression is absolutely perfect. The game tells you everything you need to do to progress, which that's easily my favorite part of it. All of the mods in here are amazing. I just can't say anything else about how awesome this pack is and how much fun I've had playing it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this series because, you know, I really liked playing it. And as always, thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I want to give a special thank you to all of my channel members. Thank you very much for watching again, and this is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming signing out.